Okay, welcome everybody. This is David Hawley, Director General, and this is our first experiment at Ecolent in hosting a live webinar. I'm coming to you live from the La Grande Bossière campus at noon on the 7th of December. And the purpose of this session is to do a trial run of this way of communicating with our parents community. I hope to do about a 15-minute or so, maybe 20-minute presentation about where we are going strategy-wise, and then I will follow from that with a set of questions. I've received so far 30 questions through the web link, and we'll see as well if there are questions that surface after my presentation. Est-ce que j'ai l'intention de faire le premier webinaire aujourd'hui en anglais? Alors, s'il y a quelqu'un qui a une question en français, vous pouvez faire ça avec le lien sur le email à le parent, et aussi vous pouvez utiliser le Zoom aussi. So, avec votre patience, je commençais en anglais avec la première présentation sur la stratégie avec le webinar. Okay, so I'm now going to switch to English. And I think when we talk about strategy, I want to approach this with some humility. And the first humility, of course, is that the future is fundamentally unknowable. So I'm starting with a blank screen, just as a kind of reminder of us always wanting to be agile and thoughtful about where we are going when we really know and can really predict the future. But we will do, of course, a good faith effort to, if you will, future-proof our students. One other thing for those who are online, I will share both this presentation and in considerably more detail than you're going to see on the slides, and of course what I will have time to speak to. I'm in this presentation going to do a very high level of the areas that we are intending to work on with our strategy. So high level, we have 5 ambitions in the strategy, and this is a strategy that we are hoping is going to take us to our centenary. So we are in a journey to our 100th birthday, which will be in 2024, and this strategy and these 5 ambitions are things we want to do ideally before 2024. So let me begin with the first ambition. The first ambition is for us to be absolutely focused, hyper-focused on learning. You're going to hear that all 5 of these ambitions in the strategy directly impact learning. And sometimes I'm going to mention students, but when I say learning, I'm really trying for all of us to build a learning culture at the school. So it's not just students, but all of us are focused on learning. I'm also, with each ambition I'm going to mention to you, I'm going to just give you an example of something that we are doing so I can make concrete what it is that we're talking about. So let me talk about this first one. So as a concrete example, we have published, and I will share after this presentation, we have published 10 evidence-based principles of learning so that we can develop here at the school, both with students as well as teachers, and ideally with parents as well, a kind of common language about learning. And a concrete first step that we've taken is we have invited all of our teachers, and I'm pleased to say that about 1 out of 4 teachers now have taken this course. It's called Creating Cultures of Thinking. You're, of course, invited to go buy the book or even take the course yourself. It's offered through Harvard University, and really examines, well, you can look at the title, The Forces That We Must Master to Truly Transform Our Schools. And this has already been very, very impactful in the school because people already have a bit of a vocabulary around this one aspect of learning, and that is creating cultures of thinking. A specific example being thinking routines that teachers and students are encouraged to engage in. Another way of thinking about ambition one, which is worth mentioning, is we really want learning to be something that is lifelong, extraordinarily engaging, and as an example of this and this kind of approach, this is something called lifelong kindergarten. Some of you may know where this is and what that logo is, but this is actually at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where they believe that the more they can create the experience at MIT, and I'm sure the same is true for EPFL or ETH, that the more we can create an experience that's more like the exploration and creativity that children had in kindergarten, the better we are to be stimulating all of that learning. So, second ambition. The second ambition is, it's a difficult question. And the question is, what is universally and intrinsically valuable to know and be able to do, and who to be as a person, or the character that you want to have. So we have started a relationship, I should say we rekindled a relationship from the 1920s, reconnecting strongly with UNESCO to try to help us answer this question about what is really worth knowing, given the lives that our students are likely to lead in the future. And so what we've done is that we've engaged, as I said, with UNESCO, and we're following this model. It's called, we're calling it the Universal Learning Program across the foundation. We anticipate that it will be called Universal Learning Framework. But the general idea here is to develop in students 7 competences that, if well developed, are going to have the most positive impact on them being the agile learners and young people and in the lives they, if you will, they're likely to lead. So I'm not going to go into the detail here, but I will invite you to look at this as you receive the slide deck from the My Ecolent site. Very exciting what we're doing. One of the key outcomes from this is we're also going to use this as an effort to begin to harmonize, like the language around learning, to harmonize a common curricular framework across the foundation. So all 3 campuses, all 8 schools, all students having some understanding of these aims. And some of them are very simple, but if they're done well, can be extraordinarily impactful. Lifelong learning, self-agency, having students interactively using diverse tools and resources, interacting with others, interacting with the world, multiliterateness, and transdisciplinarity. So very excited about where this is going. I think it's going to bring coherence to what we do across the foundation, and ideally we'll be able to capture what students have developed in terms of these competencies with a different kind of way of presenting who they are through a universal learner passport that students and perhaps even teachers will develop and use themselves. Ambition 3. Again, deceptively simple, but very complex to do well. We think that, in a world where you can learn what you want, where you want, how you want, when you want, if you're curious and ambitious, then why come to school? Why come to a bricks and mortar school like Ecolent? And I think part of the answer, if not a fundamental part of the answer, is the importance of relationships. And so we are going to explore, it's related to the next ambition, which is how we use time, but we're going to explore ways to make sure that each student at Ecolent is known well, holistically well, by the adults in the school, or specifically with a mentor in the school. And so this is an ambition of ours. I'm calling it a one-on-one challenge, because we're also building a similar kind of challenge between our teachers and their either principal or assistant principal. Ambition 4, again, parents who have been involved with some of my communications, this is going to be perhaps more challenging than I first thought. I wanted to shift the school year just 1 week earlier, and it turns out there was complete, what's the word? There was a completely binary, a group of parents, teachers, staff who really wanted it, another group who really didn't want it. And I realized to make changes in the schedule and in the calendar, it's going to take some time to really have an understanding about why and how we're going to do it. But fundamentally, how we use the school day, the school year, I would love to see us aligning that better with what we know about learning and well-being, whether it be starting the school day a little bit later for the older students, or how we organize the school calendar so that at known times of student high levels of stress, we have appropriate breaks. But we have a lot of work to do here. We're engaging with an external organization to help us do this. And we hope by the end of this year, we will have a couple of models for us to contemplate. Probably it's going to take a few years to implement because it means a lot of moving parts, a lot of conversations about what people teach, when they teach it, and so on. But quite aware that this is both a challenge and something that we need to accomplish. And then finally, well, here's a kind of simple, well, it's not simple at all. Here's an example. It's not our school, but another school, just to get the mind thinking about a possibility. So here's a secondary school, and you have, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, recognizable blocks of time like you might see in a normal timetable. But on Wednesdays, as an example, Wednesdays could be, let's say in the secondary school, let's call it expeditionary days. So if we really believe in student agency and developing lifelong learning habits in our students, that one day a week, for example, or maybe half a day, all the teachers will be here, all the students will be here, but they would do things in a structure and a relationship to time and space that is different from the other 2 days. And it wouldn't be necessarily that everybody goes to museums or they go down to the lake or they go to a university, but it might be the expedition is right here at school, that students would find time to go and do various things that take bigger blocks of time to really build a sense of student agency. So we will be exploring lots of different options. And then finally, the fifth ambition is this general idea that the environment, well, the third teacher, if you think of the adults in a child's life as the first teacher, including teachers, their peers as the second teacher. This is a model borrowed from the work of Reggio Emilia. The third teacher is, of course, the student's environment. And we are working hard on all of the campuses to make sure that we've got the right spaces for learning that are sustainable, safe, inviting, open, etc. And one of the things we've done because of lessons learned is we have published a set of design principles, architectural design principles, so that whatever we renovate, whatever we build, first and foremost is seen through these lenses. For example, in the first instance, is it child-centered? Is it beautiful? Is it inclusive? So these are things that are going to influence us. And the two biggest projects that are surfacing, the first is at the Campus de Nation, which is perhaps hard to believe, but we are planning to transform the Campus de Nation Grand Saconnet, in such a way that when we are complete, not only will we have absorbed the early years of pre-reception through years 2 onto the Grand Saconnet site, but we will actually have increased the usable play space for students from about 9,500 square meters to 15,000 square meters by cleverly using the roof space, by also moving our parking that's out front of the school to across the street, where there's lots of space at the International Labour Organization, as an example, and really turn this into a green campus and really a world-class campus built for learning. So there's some very exciting things we're doing on this campus, and the board 2 weeks ago approved the plans to take the next step for the incorporation of early years through year 2 on this site, opening probably in the fall of 2022 or 2021, depending on permissions. And then finally, another big project we have is here on this campus, the La Grande-Bossière campus. For those of you who know the campus, of course, we have the Centre des Arts, and we have next to it a 40-plus-year-old gymnasium that's sort of exfoliating some of its concrete, and we have to replace that. And so the vision that we are developing is a kind of twin to the Centre des Arts. So these two buildings will be connected, and we would build a centre sportif, but also on the top floor, it would include spaces for more collaborative learning and for meeting the demand of our secondary school students for space and different kinds of spaces for learning. So this is a very exciting direction. And then finally, how do we do all these things? We have, I'm calling these strategy enablers, 6 of them I want to share. The first and foremost is we cannot be living in a world full of extraordinary acceleration of change unless we increase our investment in the development of our teachers. So we want to really ramp up how we invest in and develop our teachers and administrators at the school. Second and third pieces are related, but we want to invite those who have the ability to make transformative contributions to the school to be able to do so. I want to recreate, which is something that I think was here about 5 years ago at Ecolent, and that is a real robust culture of philanthropy, so that we don't only rely on tuition income or fees for doing what we want to do. Fourth, absolutely unwavering focus on the student experience and the faculty culture that wraps around every student. Again, parents on the webinar will probably know, if you have parents in years 6 through 13, I surveyed the parents, all the students last year and all the faculty, and we are taking what we've learned from those surveys and making changes to enhance the student experience and the faculty culture. And the 5 strategy ambitions that I shared with you were very, very heavily focused by the outcomes from these surveys. Finally, this is maybe a soft point, but something our accreditation agencies pointed out to us a few years ago. We really need to refresh how we articulate our mission, our vision, and our values in a way that's a little bit less lengthy, if you will, and easier to understand, maybe even more inspiring in the way that we do that. So that's another piece that we feel, and others in fact feel that we need to do. And then finally, I want to thank parents in advance because we, like students and faculty, we want to start a systematic feedback loops from parents, and we will in January indeed be launching we'll be launching a survey that has a kind of relationship to the student and faculty survey to parents, so that we can learn from parents where it is that we're doing really well and where we need to make some changes. So I'm going to very quickly talk about the questions that I've received. So I'm not sure what people see, but just to share with you, there are 28 people who have joined this session, and I received in advance of this presentation about 30 questions. And I think, of course, we have 12 minutes left. I'm not going to answer all questions, but I think in the spirit of giving parents a sense of what the questions are, I'm going to share the questions, or the categories of questions I received. And I'm also going to see how many of them I can just quickly answer, because some of them are relatively easy. So here we go. Questions about computer science, scholarships for socioeconomically diversifying the school, our new schedule, streamlining the curriculum, our strategy to support students with learning difficulties, how we deal with teachers who are great and how we deal with teachers who are not so great, and how do we evaluate them? How do we evaluate our administrators? How can we bring some more consistency across our programs? Parents were observing that we have perhaps one reading program in one school, or maybe even different reading programs within a school, but across the foundation. How to deal with things like math, physics, a student who wants to do math, physics, chemistry, biology. I can answer that quickly in the IB. If the university requires that the IB can make exceptions for a timetable for that. How we make for example, the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Center, the STEM Center that we have here at the La Guambas here, how do we make that more available to all students here, but all students across the foundation get those kinds of experiences? And let me just move back to, I'm just going to go back to the opening slide here. And then another question about technology. The IB versus other qualifications. I think particularly in mathematics, I'm pleased to say that is being addressed by the IB right now. Questions about protecting students with respect to technology and having students understand technology and its potential negative impacts on their lives better than we perhaps do today. Maturité Suisse, like I can tell you, there's no plans to stop the Maturité Suisse, I can answer that quickly. Questions about French. That's something that across the foundation we are working to, again, harmonize and make really clear that we want all students, actually all members of the community, to reach a level of French proficiency given where we live. A question about candy in school, fixing the traffic at La Châtaigneraie, dealing with the office block nature at Nation, which I'm pleased to say we're going to address with the new model, but we're also thinking of we're planning to transform as soon as we can the third floor of Nation, so that it feels much more like a learning commons than it does separated pieces of library separated from a rather industrial-like cafeteria. There are questions about how we keep records on issues of racism or bullying or homophobia on campus. How we do parent feedback loops, which I've addressed briefly. There are questions about cost transparency on trips. Questions about our debt to equity ratio, especially if interest rates increase. I can just quickly address that we're following very carefully these stability markers, financial stability markers, to make sure we stay within an appropriately prudent range when we make decisions about buildings and grounds, for example. Our connections with for example, ETH or EPFL, which we do quite extensively, but the question is how tight are those links across the school? And then a question about after-school care and the use of cartoons. So I'm going to just mention that a lot of these questions, it would be great if these were directed, to the school principal in which your child is enrolled. I will in turn, of course, share these with the principal so that we are attentive to what these questions are. A couple of them that I can easily answer. We are looking at finding ways, for example, when we offer a course like computer science on one campus or film, finding ways, and this is part of the schedule, to make it possible for students on the other campuses to attend at the same time. Scholarships, I'm pleased to say we have had, just from last year, 7 scholarships that have been supported or funded for students. And so we are in the process now of actually searching for students with exceptional promise and potential to join either years 11 or 12 for a 2 or 3 year scholarship at the school, as we have done historically. And so I'm hopeful that we will find those students to start next year. There's questions around sort of evaluations. I can share with you that this is a very high priority across the school. We just had a retreat yesterday, we being myself, and all of the principals and all the assistant principals, and we're going to have another retreat in January expressly to deal with this topic of how do we give feedback and focus on creating the best possible teachers. But if there are teachers for whom meeting baseline expectations, they're not meeting those baseline expectations, we're going to find ways to be very clear about that and to provide support and improvement loops to make sure that we are attentive to that unequivocally and clearly. I should also say that we have a couple of areas in the school where we have extraordinary results. So, I mean, a good example is that our IB higher level mathematics here at La Grande Glacière, for example, not only are fantastic in an absolute way, but we study the added value using various examinations. And there are more than 2 standard deviations above the prediction of what you would normally expect for students who come in at, let's say, year 12. I want to find out what's going on in these extraordinarily successful areas of the school and make sure that that is shared. And even simply to make sure that the teacher knows that we're observing that there's some real areas of excellence and would like to talk about it. I think I'll say briefly about French. I think we need to be much clearer about French and English both for students and for faculty. We are working on harmonizing how we even assess or measure what the level of French somebody has achieved, again, both students and staff, so that we can live in a truly bilingual, at least in terms of communicative proficiency in French and in English. There was the question, which is of course a critical question about the experience of students, whether they feel bullied, etc. That's something that I am monitoring very closely. And the surveys that I mentioned, the one thing I can say, which is not to say we're going to be complacent in any way, but the reason why I did these surveys, these are research-based surveys that are given to about 217 other schools around the world. Over 1 million students are answering these questions. I could see whether our incidence of students who say they report behavior between students that is unkind or that might be related to bullying, I'm able to see how our students reporting about relates to or compares to other schools, including international schools around the world. So the good news is that our incidence of that is not any different, neither better nor worse than other schools. At the same time, it's something that we need to continue to pay attention to. Some of the other pieces like transparency on trips, I'm going to work with our director of finance just to make sure those questions are answered. Now, in terms of what we can do here, I wonder how do I allow you to offer live questions? Let's see here if I know how to do that. I'm going to take a big risk here, and I'm just going to, we have about 3 minutes left, and if somebody wants to ask a live question, they can go ahead and do that. We'll try that aspect of this webinar. So if you have your microphone on, in theory, everyone could participate. Anyone want to offer a question? Okay, I don't have anybody asking a question. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to mute again, and I'm going to see how we can see if people would like to offer a question. Okay, so we're going to, it's now 12:30. For those of you who have been with us, I want to say thank you. Our intention will be to publish this. I'm going to create a foundation strategy link on the My Echelon site under Foundation. So you can find links to both this presentation and the references that I've made to things like the Universal Learner Program website, our principles of learning, our design principles, this slide deck, and other links that might be of interest to you as parents. And otherwise, I want to say thank you and wish everybody a wonderful weekend. And thanks for participating in this first ever, at least so far as I'm aware, webinar from the Director General. And we'll see what sort of feedback we get on this. Thank you so much. You see? Stop. Mm-hmm.